All right, good morning, Copiers. It is 29th of January. It's a Friday, and that means one thing: it is time for my weekly update. It has been quite an interesting week, to say the least. I will touch on the most obvious news of the week, and then I will talk about my portfolio, what I've done through this week, and what my plans are for next week. So let's get into it. All right, so my monthly performance to date is about 3.76%. It's bounced around quite a lot. This month has been fairly volatile for a number of reasons. This is fine, and I think that some months we're going to see huge gains, and other months we'll be in the red. That's just how this game goes. It's a game best played over years, not days, weeks, or even months. So in terms of my 24-month return, if you'd invested some money with me 2 years ago, you would now have 132% of your money back in terms of profit. And if you'd invested with me since I joined eToro, you would now be over 600% up. And so that means if you had put in 10 grand with me, you would now have over 70,000, which is, pretty decent return. So I encourage you to think about things in terms of the long term. I know this week has been a little bit scary for some, especially since we've had this lovely bull run and there's been a bit of a shakeout. But I urge you to hold on, because when you get shaken out, that's when you lose money. All right, so it's been a bit of a crazy week. It's not over yet. It looks as though some of the major, almost all of the indexes are quite a lot down today. And this is for a few reasons. One of them being that it's the end of the month, and some profit taking is inevitable, especially when the end of the month coincides with the end of a week. In terms of what's going on in news, it looks as though Robinhood and GameStop are dominating Seeking Alpha, Investing.com, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and many others. There's also obviously mention about the vaccine, which is the other big narrative that's kind of been pushed a little bit to the background, but is still incredibly important. What we're seeing in the headlines is a lot of it's Wall Street versus WallStreetBets. It's the big guys versus the small guys. I know there are a lot of hedge funds that have lost a lot of money through the past week and month, but actually Wall Street has probably made a shitload of money because they are the market makers. So when we buy and sell our stocks, who do you think we're buying and selling from? Who makes the market? Who creates the liquidity? A lot of the time it's what we call Wall Street. It's the institutions. So I would take the narrative with a pinch of salt, because it's not WallStreetBets versus Wall Street. Wall Street's doing just fine. So interesting things that happened through this week. There was a bit of a sharp sell-off in the middle of the week. A lot of retail brokers had some trouble servicing their customers, and I still don't know exactly what caused this. I know there are some reasons that are being touted, but I don't know if I believe them entirely. So this big red candle, particularly in the NASDAQ. So retailers couldn't trade, volumes fell through the floor. There was a big drop-off across a lot of major indexes. I took the opportunity to pick up a few stocks that were on the cheap. To be honest, even with that drop-off, most of the market was still massively overpriced. So although I have picked up a few things, I didn't go shopping in a big way. I've still got a lot of cash on hand. Earnings through this week, at least the ones that I watch, have mostly been excellent. Microsoft, fantastic result. Apple, best quarter ever, although I am nervous about Apple's future. And Facebook did very well too, although they were cautious about the future outlook, because there's a lot of legislation coming around the way the data moves around, which is good. It's good for us, good for them too, but it will take them some time to adapt. I've also trimmed positions in a number of Highflyers. So I've been saying, and a lot of other people have been saying for a long time, that the market is looking expensive. And I've been waiting for earnings and earnings results to decide what to trim and by how much. So you can see that I've exited quite a few high profile positions here with a decent amount of profit. Although I am still in most of these companies, I've just reduced my risk in terms of my exposure to these businesses. I've also added some positions that many would consider more defensive. And this is because at some point there's going to be a rotation into other types of stocks that are not tech. And so you can see some of my most recent purchases here. They're not all defensive. Some of them are just they were just at a good price. Nokia is probably one that's interesting to a few people. They were traded up massively, I think, on Wednesday, but came back down to earth yesterday. And actually, I managed to get in a better price than I'd hoped, just because of the big sell-off. Nokia is a good company for a number of reasons. I'm not going to deep dive on it right now. Probably the number one reason is that their CEO since last year is fantastic and has started to prove that he's able to turn that business around. And they've got a good future in terms of their ability to deliver on 5G and 6G. Sorry, my notes are often to the left. That's why I'm looking there. So last night, there was a lot of outrage as a large number of retailers stopped or limited trading on the small cap stocks that had become very popular through the past week. This was interesting to watch, but it seems to have created another opportunity, which is that a lot more people are calling for decentralization of the markets and products around the markets, and this is going to benefit the likes of cryptos, obviously. So I don't know if anyone's been following. I'm not logged in, but if you were to visit Elon Musk's portfolio right now, his profile, on Twitter, you would see that there is just one thing in there, which is dun, 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 dun. I don't want to ruin the surprise. Hashtag Bitcoin. And so I'm looking to take advantage of this trend. I'm not sure how long it's going to run for, if it will be sustained or short term, but I've picked up some Bitcoin because it's the best known crypto, and that's already making some profit for us. All right, the vaccine rollout is another big headline. The UK and the EU are having a little bit of a battle in terms of supply of vaccine to the markets. So we'll see how that goes. The UK is saying we want to have 100 million vaccines done before we share our supply. So that's interesting. Let's see how that goes. The vaccine rollout in the UK is pretty good. It's the best in Europe. So I think more than 10 million people have been vaccinated so far, which is fantastic. Go us. But there's a lot of other bad news. So car sales are at a multi-decade low. Retail properties are empty across the country, which is going to create a huge hole and a lot of problems for landlords and companies that manage and own properties. So that's very sad. There's going to be a lot of small businesses that have and will continue to go under, and a lot of people that will be unemployed, which is terrible news. So I'll be watching that as it develops. In terms of the US, so the US economic growth seems to have been smaller in Q4 than people would have liked, although the result was more or less expected. But on the flip side, the US is largely reopening for business now, and fairly explosive growth in US GDP is expected through the remainder of this year. And I think we'll see that trend through the rest of the world. So I know that there's a lot of negative sentiment right now in the world, but we just need to bear in mind that by the end of this year, unless something catastrophic happens, it is very likely that the world in general will be in a much better place. All right, then in terms of the coming week, so we've got some big earnings coming up. There were some big earnings this week, but next week you can see 2nd of February, Google, Amazon, Electric Arts, Alibaba all will be reporting. A few interesting companies on the 3rd and then a few more on the 4th. So I'll be keeping an eye on those. As I mentioned earlier, I think cryptos could continue to see their rally. but you never know. Let's see how sentiment works. Sentiment could flip quite fast, but Bitcoin is up quite nicely today. And I'll keep watching the news around GameStop, Robinhood, etc. I'm not going to trade any of those stocks because I need to be responsible with the quite large amount of money that I manage. But there might be developments around legislation that could affect the way that I trade, the way that we all trade in the future. So that is something to bear in mind and keep an eye on. All right, I hope you had a fun week. I know that maybe it wasn't the most profitable for some of us, but the days and weeks don't really matter when it comes to trading and investing. So have a great weekend, get a good rest. It's going to be another very interesting week next week, and we need to be rested so that we can work hard. All right, cheers, bye.